The chief nurse sat in her observation pod at the Stellar Citizen Hospital, feeling a bit anxious. It wasn't every cycle that the hospital performed surgery on a human from Earth. This could become dangerous. The human was undergoing a cancer removal, a partial removal of his thyroid gland, something located in the neck part of the human form. It was all very odd to her. She had done a lot of studying in preparation for this procedure as the chief nurse. She would be in charge of the human's recovery after the robotic surgery. The surgery had just finished, and the human was now in her care. In the post-surgery ward, his general anesthesia was supposed to keep him unconscious for a good 12 to 16 more hours, and she was to monitor him closely. Just as she was the most worried, thinking of the many ways a human could simply wreck the facility, one of the heart monitors in her pod started to beep. In alarm, the beep gaps increased in rate per second and in pitch. When the beeps became too fast, the heart monitor emitted long tones, still rising in pitch. "Oh, by the dark star, not already. This is too soon," she muttered. It was the human patient, of course. His heart rate and blood pressure were spiking rapidly. He was waking up, and his body was alarmed. Angry. Now, the heart monitor blared in a police siren-like alarm, but the chief nurse didn't have time to look up what that particular alarm signified. With regard to human heart monitors, because there was a bang heard through the wall and the sound of struggling, the chief nurse got up and raced into the ward to see to nurses struggling to hold the human down. The human was definitely awake and definitely upset. The nurses were panicking, one on each of the human's arms. But the human was very strong, throwing the nurses back repeatedly, ripping his arms from their grip and slamming a tight grip of his own onto the metal railings, trying to sit up. Do not let him sit up, he could fall to the floor. The chief nurse thundered with authority. The nurses rushed back, grabbing the human's arms and pulling them free of the rail to wrestle with the patient again. "We are trying, but we need help here. This one is a fighter," one of the nurses exclaimed. The chief nurse gestured to other nurses nearby. "You two, get over here and hold his shoulders down." She glared at the nurses. What happened? As the four alien nurses finally held the human down, one of the nurses replied nervously. "We just finished the extubation of his breathing tube, and he just started to wake up. We thought he would be paralyzed for some time still, but he suddenly hissed in a deep breath and suddenly became mobile." The young nurse was at a loss for words. I don't know how. The chief nurse nodded. "That would be the adrenaline, kiddo. We need to calm him down fast." The human paused in his struggles and turned his head a bit as if finally making sense of his situation. Can't see," the human croaked with recently abused vocal cords. He nodded and, with a final yank, ripped his arms free again and, with shaking hands, interlaced his fingers across his chest as he struggled to control his hissing breaths through his teeth. "They were just taped shut, sir. You woke up just so early. Here, let me get those for you," the chief nurse said as she peeled the tape off. The human visibly relaxed as he looked around, his heart rate dropping noticeably already. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" "Water," the human croaked. The chief nurse pulled up the human's procedure data. His surgery had begun only 3 hours ago. He should have been under general anesthesia for many more hours than this. He might have been aware of the surgery. No wonder he woke up fighting. "We need to talk to human doctors and anesthesiologists immediately." The human lay in his recovery bed, surrounded by human surgeons, anesthesiologists, and lawyers. For some reason, they had all raced to the station on the highest authority jump gate clearance. "Greetings, Mr. Johnson. Glad to see you are on an amazing recovery. Now, could you please tell us the very first thing you were aware of after going under for the procedure?" one of the human doctors asked. The human shook his head with a wry grin. "Honestly, it was just waking up here, not knowing where I was, unable to open my eyes with strange hands grabbing me. My head was a little fuzzy still, and it was only a half notion that I had been kidnapped or abducted again or something. Not remembering, I was here for surgery or anything. The other humans nodded with visible relief. That explained the fight instinct quite well, actually. The human continued, I mean, I assume. There was a tube down my throat getting pulled out. I missed even that, thank goodness. With that, the other humans nodded, wished the patient well, and left. The chief nurse was greatly relieved. Apparently, nothing was done improperly. The patient was just an outlier of sorts. Later in her shift, she was watching the video feeds of the patient's bed, just curious about human physiology. She knew the general anesthesia he was under was a strong one with a paralytic that should have kept a human unconscious for at least 12 hours. She watched the video as one of the nurses extubated the plastic tube from the patient's mouth. No wonder he couldn't speak immediately after its removal. The patient's eyebrows drew together, his large jaw muscles clenched visibly, and his head slowly turned to the right, catching the nurse's attention. Oh, I think he's waking up, one of them said to the other as the heart monitor started to climb. No way, it's too soon, he just got here, the other said. Yeah, but he can't move yet, right? The nurse said nervously, this is a big one here. The other nurse was about to confirm that the patient couldn't move when suddenly the human sucked in a large breath, and all of his arms and legs lashed out, smashing into the rails of the bed. He grabbed the railings and tried to surge up to a sitting position. Oh, Dark Star, he's fully mobile. How? Who? What do we do? Take the chief nurse and grab him. One of the nurses exclaimed. The chief nurse turned off the video, already knowing the rest. She shook her horned head. She had heard that humans were terrifying when in war mode, and she didn't particularly care for this intimate demonstration firsthand on her home turf. That could have gone so much worse. She was relieved that the well-documented talking a human down procedure was also proven to be so effective as well.